Okay, so here we are at session 3 of releasing our spiritual Hametz, and I'm truly honored to see as many people back again. A number of people told me they couldn't make it today, and I hope they're continuing to do some of the work or perhaps watching our sessions afterwards. So what I like to do, as you know by now, at the beginning is to just check in with everybody and see how your week has been. If you, in particular, have had any experiences working with the work we've been discussing, that would be interesting to hear about.
So, Kathy,
Yes.
I think, in response to your book and leaving our narrow space and a sense of rebirth, I've decided to do something this Passover that I haven't done in 3 decades. Joining Richard's family for Passover via Zoom. I realize, and Barbara, you'll appreciate this because in the past, it was Debbie's wish, our daughter Deborah's wishes and desires that we keep everything the same as it always was. She does not like change. She does not like adapting to other people. And I had started in past years making some changes, as you know, Barbara, and not always letting her control my choices. But this year in particular, I've decided to join Richard's mother's family. And they're using the liberal Haggadah. It's a new Haggadah that it has all different things on the Seder plate, including for lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual people. It's a new Haggadah. And the truth is, I'm very excited. One of the reasons in the past we had stopped joining them, and it was a long time ago, is during the Seder, when there was the older generation leading it, the cousins who were our age were sitting at another table making jokes through the whole thing. And I decided that was not a way to raise my children. So I was actually asked, since I said we were joining, if I'd help organize it, meaning assign the parts, work with 2 other cousins. And I really thought, oh, am I the sacrificial lamb? What are they really looking for? Because they sort of know where I stand in that I'm very traditional. So then it turns out, because one of the cousin's daughters, who's a PhD student, she's not that young, asked if anyone knew the tradition of the 4 cups. I mean, why do we have 4 cups? And I had just read it in the Talmud. So I turned it into a PDF and sent it to her. And to my surprise, she said, will you lead a discussion on the 4 cups based on this? And I will include it in the Haggadah. And I realized I'm not the sacrificial lamb. I realize everyone has grown, which makes sense, of course. They all have children, and many of them are grandparents already. And I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. So, Kathy, I want to thank you. I really do, because I'm taking this leap, which isn't that big a leap, really, but it's a leap for me. And I'm looking forward to it greatly. And, so I really revisited your book even and realized it touches on all the parts of the wheel, making a choice like this. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled that you were willing to share all that with us. And it certainly does sound like a huge leap out of the narrows. And
Yes.
it gives me goosebumps to hear about, and I'm excited for you. I hope it goes really, really well, and I hope afterwards you'll share with me and others, if we care to keep in touch or however, what your experience was.
Well, I made up my mind already. This is the mental part of it. Whatever it is, it's great.
Wonderful.
Whatever it is, it's great, because I've already done the work of leaving the narrows. There's no outcome that could be better I mean, less than great is what I meant to say, because of the choice. So we're celebrating with Deborah on the second night. We'll do the traditional Seder we always do, from a Haggadah we bought maybe a decade ago. So we did upgrade our Haggadah a decade ago. But this is going to be different. And I'm really looking forward to it, because actually, I don't mind change. I don't mind being flexible and adaptable. Somehow, I've let my daughter hold me back. So I'm not doing that this year.
I'm hearing many major changes there. Good for you. It's very exciting. And I love how you say, whatever it is, it's great. It reminded me of two things. One was our daughters and two sons bar mitzvah and bar mitzvah. And I refused to be nervous. I'm sure I was somewhat, but I just said, my one instruction to them was show up. All you have to do is show up. From then on, it's gravy. That's just be there. It'll all be wonderful. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say too, Janie. And in my own, the second thing that came to mind was in my own anticipation of the holiday and the cleaning and the shopping, and there is always so much task work to be done. And I have two books I'll show you in a little bit by Melinda Ribner, who's a clinical social worker. I'm not sure if she also is a rabbi. I used to see work of hers by the name Mindy Ribner, but these are Melinda Ribner. I'm sure it's the same person. And she was going through the franticness of Pesach and living in a small apartment in New York, and the roof had a leak and the water was coming down, and her landlord, who never attended to her, actually, she prayed to God and said, I can't do this. I can't do it. I certainly can't do it by myself. And that time, she picked up the phone, and for the first time ever, the landlord actually answered the phone and brought her a new oven by the next morning. And then she made that conscious choice too. She said, God's here with me. God's helping me. I'm just an agent of God. And whatever I do, however I do it, I'm doing it with the proper kavanah, the right intention for wanting this to be a wonderful, spiritual and enjoyable evening. And whatever is. So I think that's a good attitude to go into most things with. Eli, I see you chuckling. Is there something you'd like to share with us?
Do I have a virtual background that's fun?
Yes.
Yes, you do. God bless your sense of humor. I love it.
There.
Okay.
It's the Paw Patrol. Actually,
okay.
I had a question. I'm not even familiar with it. I just know they're important to certain people. But I had a question about physical chametz. So I like to bake, and I know I can't use leavening, so I can't use baking powder and baking soda, but is flour no good also? Because isn't that what matzah is made of? I mean, isn't matzah just flour and water?
So stop right there for 1 second. There is kosher LePesach baking powder.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know where you go in Cleveland for your shopping, but you would be amazed from the days of how Eli and Mimi and I grew up in my mother's house, which there was nothing you could eat. And
elite bubble gum from Israel,
chewing
and
gum,
the jelly rings.
Although jelly things that I can't.
Janie brought the wedges, the fruit wedges, to pass over at your house, and they were wonderful. I didn't enjoy them as a kid, but I loved them as an adult.
Right. Same. Yeah, but so there is kosher LePesach baking powder, and there's kosher LePesach cake meal. No, you cannot use your regular flour. The matzah question, that is flour and water with no leavening agents added, but it is allowed and can only bake for 18 minutes exactly. So it doesn't get too high. And
Because I was
those who
thinking, I could do a
more,
brownie,
please
I could
chime
do
in.
any number of things that use flour. Huh. So then they also bring in the element of time. Okay.
So I thought it was when you mix the flour and water together, and you have to bake it within the 18 minutes before it starts to naturally rise.
Okay, I think that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, you don't have 18 minutes from absolute start to finish. It bakes for 18 minutes. Correct?
No.
Anyone else who's knowledgeable add in? Good questions, though, Eli. I have
Right.
wondered the same thing.
Shelley's
too.
right. It can only sit before it goes in the oven for the 18 minutes.
And you can do it if you can
Oh.
get it before, but you only have an 18-minute window
So,
to mix it up and get it ready to bake before 18 minutes. Otherwise, it naturally rises.
But it
And
has to bake
after
within
you
that
make-
18 minutes.
And
Yes.
after you make the matzah, then you can break it down or crumble it or whatever to make matzah meal, matzah flat, whatever, matzah farfo, whatever. But it comes from that original 18-minute matzah, the one that was baked before 18 minutes.
But it's a little confusing because I think Janie was saying something different, Shelley. And
No.
Janie, are you saying no, that you have 18 minutes from the absolute beginning of the mixing of the flour through the baking?
no, I was confirming what Shelley said.
So you can take as long as you want to mix the matzah.
No, 18 minutes.
18
Once the
minutes.
water hits it, 18
Okay.
minutes.
And then baking time.
Well, you're not going to bake it long because it would be
Burn. It would burn.
inedible.
Okay, so it can bake outside of that 18 minutes, however
Yeah,
long
you
it's
know,
needed.
You
Eli,
get it in the oven and then it's quick, whatever. I don't know. I've never made matzah, but then you take that matzah that's, that's now kosher for Passover, and you can make other things from it. The matzah meal, that's where it comes from. The matzah meal, the matzah farfel, whatever.
Eli, there are a ton of Jewish cookbooks that have Passover sections in them with lots of recipes for baking.
No, I thank you. But I'm
But there
always
are.
comfortable baking things without flour. But then I was thinking about matzah, and it just occurred to me, why am I avoiding flour? But now
Okay.
but I guess I get the rest of it. So
Yes.
we can make a flourless chocolate tort. We're fine.
Oh, you
Oh,
have
of course. Are
made
you going to
Passover.
have us
That's
all?
delicious.
We do a Zoom Passover among our family here in Cleveland, which is one of the benefits of the Zoom experience that we've
Yeah.
been able to incorporate that. But anyway, all right. So that was my physical Hametz question. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Barbara, it looked before like you were trying to say something or add something. Was there something you were going to say?
Basically, they're saying, it's a total of 18 minutes from the time you start preparing it. That's my understanding, that it's, but again, are we talking about a lot of chametz here? Is this it? It's like, you have, what time do you start the Seder? Okay, so it's going to be really late this year if you're technically, if you're technically, it's an hour after sunset, so it's really late, and you have all these special rules this year because of Shabbos, and you can't be anticipating the end of Shabbos, even though that's when you have to have stuff ready for the Seder, is at the end of Shabbos, which is an hour after sunset, which makes it like 9 o'clock at night by the time you can, start a Seder. And if you're saying like part of the purpose of the Seder is to include the kids and get the kids excited, how do you accomplish that? There are all these, these little details this year. We're going to be with family who have a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Okay, you know, what do you do with that? Because you know, do you want to wait until 9 o'clock at night and try to include them at that point? Or is there some, I mean, I want to try to look up, maybe Janie knows, whether there's some way you can do part of the Seder before the Seder so that the kids can, you know, and then you come to, you know, maybe what you do is you do something like that Seder related with the kids, and then do a grown-up Seder after they go to bed, or, you know, do a kid's Seder on Sunday night and do a grown-up Seder on Saturday night, you know, and then you start thinking, is this Hametz? You know, all these little itsy bitsy details that
Right,
you're dealing with.
is it the size of an olive or is it a crumb? I mean, I think you have to decide. I mean, those are a lot of worthwhile, excellent questions that we could spend the next hour talking on any one of them, and we can't because I have some other topics to continue.
Can I answer Barbara's question?
Sure.
Okay, so when I was working with Rabbi Bev in long-term care as a chaplain, we did basically a model Seder, you could call it, you know, like they do in Sunday school or used to do in Sunday school. I was preparing Seders, not the food, the facility always did the food for liability reasons, but I was preparing model Seders in a dozen facilities. And that's what it was, a model Seder. You don't light the candles because it's not the right time of day. There were times where we had a full meal because the facility was willing to prepare a full meal. And that was a much fuller, that was a Seder, but it wasn't at the right time. You know, even the Talmud will say this, it's about kavanah, it's about intention. And so for the seniors, our intention was to provide them with a Seder experience surrounded by their, I guess you'd call it other Jewish residents to create community. So I think you can do that with your kids, but our philosophy was always to do it before the holiday, not after. The excitement is before the holiday, not after the holiday.
Thank you. Very, very knowledgeable.
And now I'll keep quiet.
Answer. What? No, please. I mean, the hope is that we will continue to share. I just was going to take some of what Barbara was saying. I had a question I was going to ask a little later on, but it segues in my mind anyways, we're talking about freedom and individual freedom and choices. And yet on Pesach, we have more restrictions placed on us than any other time of the year, any other day, night of the weeks. And it's an interesting dilemma. I have a couple thoughts because I thought of this before I just said it to you. But that to me is a very big question. How can taking on restrictions actually grant us more freedom?
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, my feeling about that is the same thing with like Shabbos. You have numerous restrictions. Now, are they really restrictions, or do they allow you the freedom to engage in activity that you can't engage in otherwise because you're busy with, you're busy with these things that like cooking or, you know, preparing, cleaning, or weeding the garden, or, you know, all these things that you can't do, and you can't do on Passover either, you know, because it's hot. But my feeling is that the restrictions, a lot of the restrictions that you get give you a greater freedom because they give you the freedom to investigate intellectually and spiritually, which is what you're aiming to facilitate through this group. The different questions that arise because you're not concerned with cooking, you're not concerned. The meal is great, having a really good meal, and it should all be done beforehand, so you're not spending time in the kitchen, you know, waiting on people. So I think the restrictions are positive. And I remember once talking to a yeshiva boy. Actually, my husband talked to him and I listened. And he was saying he was a guy who was about tshuva, and he had been a real womanizer. And my husband said to him, how did you make this transition? Now you won't look at a woman, you won't. And he said, you wouldn't believe the freedom that I have. I have the freedom now not to look at a woman and think of what I can do with her. I'm free of that now. I mean, it's just an interesting thing when sometimes restrictions give you freedom. I think the people in China are dealing with it now. You've got a lot of restrictions, a lot of oversight, a lot of surveillance, but they're free of crime. Okay. All right. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's what we should do, but it's interesting.
It is. Thank you.
How restrictions can give you freedom.
I'd like to add something about Passover where it comes to the restrictions. They're not restrictions. The Haggadah is about us reliving our ancestors' experience. So as you go through the week of Passover, you're supposed to identify, you're encouraged to identify with our ancestors and what it took to get through the desert in 40 years of walking. I would say no showers, no clean clothes, sand between your toes. You're supposed to relive it. The Torah is the story of Moses in Exodus, but the Haggadah is our story. And I think if you enter into it as it's your personal story, as the Haggadah tells us each year, I think you look at it as, well, as Barbara said, it gives you more opportunity to reflect back and look at our history and what our ancestors went through and what it took to be reborn from slaves to people who could make choices. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you.
So I grew up within an Orthodox situation, and I sat through, I grew up in Orthodox Seders. As a young child, I sat there through those Orthodox Seders, and it was in Hebrew, very little English. And I learned, and I drank the wine as a young child. We drank the wine. Of course, we fell asleep at the table from the wine. That was one way of dealing with us. But I grew up watching my grandmother and my mother go through all the preparations for Passover and all the shopping and all the work. And then when it was my turn, I did it. And, I found it very liberating. I would go to the grocery store and feel liberated. I would feel I am making choices. I am not buying all this chazarai. I am making specific choices of what I'm purchasing. And I'm reading the labels, and I don't know, it's kind of weird, but I found it very liberating.
Thank you. And I think that that's the point that we're all saying, that even the phrase from the Bible that we read the first week we met, there's freedom from and freedom to. So if your freedom from are your restrictions, your freedom to is to take in and rest and enjoy and prepare enough ahead of time that so that you too are a participant who's enjoying the whole experience. One other thing, I guess it came up to my mind, Barbara, when you were speaking about the yeshiva bacher. I always felt that when people make a commitment and get married and promise intimacy only with that other person, and you say, You're my person. You're it. You are beyond where anyone else can get to in my life, and my commitment is to you. For me, at least, that made me very, very free to have male, female friends, to be with anyone. It wasn't that, oh, good, I never am going to look at a man again, but it gave me a tremendous personal freedom to appreciate a beautiful man, a beautiful woman, beautiful couples, and know that's just appreciating some of God's work, and knowing that my husband doesn't have to be at all jealous, because he knows that I would just never act on that, and I thankfully never did. And so that was, the covenants of marriage are very restrictive, but they free us to have such expansive relationships in so many ways with many, many different people.
Sometimes there's a freedom that comes from, I think of Steve Jobs always wearing the same clothes, that, you don't have to think about it. You just, you make a choice that this is, I'm going to simplify this, I'm going to hew to this particular practice here. And then whatever mental energy, emotional energy you might have put into shopping for clothes and picking out what you were going to wear, you've got for things that really matter to you. And, I don't know if how that would apply necessarily to having a meal, that is by its nature an order of things. But I guess, it makes it, your menu planning is pretty simple. It's like, okay, I know what's coming
it
next.
also speaks to, if we refer back to our model, behavioral and choices, that a part of my physical being are the clothes that I put on and what I choose to wear. And I think Katharine Hepburn made that choice, and Coco Chanel made that choice. They weren't going to have to think about it anymore. This is what they wore. And as you were saying that, what came to my mind, Eli, were monks and nuns.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that goes back to what Barbara was saying about being spiritually free. You can look at it as they're totally bound up in order and rules, and down to what they wear and whether they even speak or not. But I imagine it's a continuing practice, because it frees up, who knows? I certainly don't know, but tremendous space in their head, thought, mind, prayers, if they interact with other people, in their interactions with other people. So there's a lot that we can let go of, even in Buddhist practices, and letting go, becoming so that our ego doesn't exist even anymore. Who knows? I wouldn't say I can go there, or that I even want to right now, totally, to be out in only the spiritual world. But if we interpret it through Judaism, we're supposed to be in the physical world, because it's through doing the mitzvot and our behaviors and actions with other people that we're actually doing God's work on earth, helping him to perfect the world.
In terms of physical Hametz, I hope you won't tell on me, and I hope everything that we say stays here.
Well, it does, but it's being recorded, don't forget.
Oh,
So,
you know what? I don't mind.
Oh, okay.
I'm over 70. I don't mind. There's a
Okay.
freedom in being over 70. I stopped making myself crazy cleaning my house out for Passover. My feeling was that I have moderately severe psoriatic arthritis that requires me to take very expensive medication and give myself injections. And I've decided that I don't think I'm supposed to take any well-being I feel and put it into emptying cabinets and cleaning them out. I have to put the well-being I feel, which I do feel much better on the medicine, into reading, contemplating, planning how to make Passover more special or have some unique things each year. I don't think I was meant to clean out my entire house, and especially during COVID, where you can't hire someone to help you. I don't have the physical strength to do it actually anymore. So I stopped. And I still feel very observant of Passover, and I still feel very spiritually connected to the holiday. But my cabinets might have crumbs in them.
Well, a couple answers there too, of course. First of all, clearing chametz for Passover is not spring cleaning. You can clean your house and do spring cleaning anytime you want, but it's a different experience, and it's not meant to be the same experience. And from things I've read this year in particular from some rabbis addressing COVID, they very much said what you have said. We've all been through tremendous hardship this year. And it's the kavanah, it's the intention. The reason I used the size of an olive before, which I learned, I think, just last year from Rabbi Spitzer. I had never realized, at least in our conservative tradition, I don't know if it's the same in Orthodox, that it isn't considered chametz unless it's the size of an olive. So those teeny tiny crumbs, even though we're all used to getting rid of them and trying to get things as clean as possible, those aren't even big enough to be considered. Now, you know, we might use different utensils and plates, and heaven forbid, it's like that building a fence. It's building a fence so that you don't, God forbid, ingest anything that's chametz. But personally, and again, I'm not a rabbi, personally, the peace I've made with it is the kavanah, the desire to connect with other Jews all over the world who are doing whatever they're doing, and or even maybe making the choice, and this isn't mine, it's from, I think, the book I quoted last week, but I'm not sure, so I won't say, but it isn't mine, that even to ignore Passover is making a choice, is expressing your freedom that I don't want to do this year. I decided I'm not going to observe Passover this year. That's a choice, and that with choice is freedom. But that's your conscious choice, and you're making it. So my own opinion is there's no, I mean, that's why we have discussions in Chevruta and study Talmud, because there are so many different variations and answers and reflections. And we try to go to, let's say, the rabbis before us, or somebody, you want to experience something or learn from someone who's had much more knowledge than you, perhaps. And then you decide what it is you're going to do with that. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, Barbara, did you want to say something?
I think that when you think in terms of Passover observance, the title of your book is very meaningful in every generation. I mean, that in a sense is a restriction that we're setting when we look at Passover observance. We're saying, okay, in every generation, this is what we do. In every generation. So that in itself is a restriction, but the hope is that it gives you the freedom to be able to identify with every generation. So, you know, they're both sides to that aspect.
Interesting. Yes, thank you. Thanks for that. Well, while we still have, well, we have time. We said that we were going to talk, just to get us back on the topic of working our way through the book, that this week we would talk some about emotional clearing. And that's a big one, really, really big. And they are all so tied together. The emotional ties to our thinking, ties to our behavior, ties to our physical choices. But emotions are a huge topic. And like everything else, we can't do a thing about it, about anything, unless we first recognize it. So we have to have tools and skills to say, oh, I recognize this feeling. This is a feeling of happiness, or this is a feeling of sadness, and this is a feeling of delight, and this is a feeling of grief, that we have to really be willing to tune into ourselves when we're having those feelings. And some are pleasant and some are not so pleasant, but there's no such thing as a good or a bad feeling. And Barbara brought up the example last week when we met of anger, which for many people is a very unpleasant experience. And yet it isn't the anger that's wrong. The anger, the hope, the sadness, the grief, those are all, they just exist. Those are feelings. They are there and they're within us. And all the more so, the more complex type of person we are, the many, many more feelings we're going to have. So again, if we look at some of the unpleasant ones to us, and we say, for example, that I don't like who I become when I feel angry, or I don't like the way I behave, or I hit my child, or I screamed at them, or I screamed at my husband, so I'm not going to allow that anymore. Then you're just pushing things down, perhaps finding other ways to forget about them, turning to substances, turning to activities that for a moment might take your mind away from the discomfort you're feeling. But the truer to yourself choice is to recognize and allow every feeling. It exists, it's there. It has to be allowed to swirl through your body and your mind, and for you to turn it every which way and see what it's about. And then learn some choices as to how you might want to respond to it. And one choice might be to not respond. That's a choice. And we can talk about other ways that what we do with those feelings. But the hint I have in here on emotional clearing is to pay attention to your self-talk. What are you saying? How does what you say make you feel? How does that event and what you say to yourself make you feel? Then feel the feeling and sit with it and allow it, and just finish hearing what else you say to yourself. And that is why I do make the suggestion to carry around pen and pencil, or use your phone if you like to take notes on your phone, to just jot down when something happens and you think about it and feel a reaction to it. Make a note of it, get to know yourself, and then we can talk about different ways of dealing with that feeling. So let's take a moment for any questions or thoughts on that. Dan. Unmute, unmute.
The dogs stay quiet. We'll see. Like mommy's on the phone. I want to get a book for my sister. I'm spending Pesach with my sister for the first time in years. And it might be just 4 of us or 6 of us. And she said, how about salmon? I said, that's a wonderful idea. And it was interesting in trying to describe the book. And Kathy knows my partner has beginning dementia. We don't know how awful it's going to be, how fast, how anything yet. And it's tough. He's away now visiting his son. And I was describing what had angered me to Ruthie as Hametz, sorry. And it was very hard. I understand it in the book, and I was trying to explain it. So I have to get a book for her. It's easier. But I was saying that now understanding that some of the things that Rich has said or done were not him. It might be the disease. And so it's let me let go of it. Not 100%. I take my time with stuff like this, but, and a very close friend of mine is very active in final exit, which is euthanasia. And she's saying, oh, you have to do it now. And, you know, he's still compos mentis. And I was,
Hmm.
and I'm saying, a little too soon. And the man is still driving and taking his granddaughter for a walk. He's really okay.
Oh,
Other people wouldn't notice the words he's forgetting or little bit of confusion or forgetting things, you know, it's minor at this point. And I know where she was coming from, but so anyway, then, you know, when I was upset, and then I thought, you know what, this isn't a death sentence, it's a life sentence. I am going to use every second when we're not fighting. You know, I'm not a realist, but I'm really going to try to say it's more fun doing errands with him than not doing errands without, you know, doing it without him. Was stupid things that and just, if you're going to be together, you might as well enjoy being together, even if it's something as banal as going to Target or whatever. So that's my take on it. And I thinking of it as a crumb to throw away, or an olive, or an elephant in the room, whatever the size of what's happening at that moment, to try to be in the moment and remember all the good stuff.
mm,
So
excellent. Good for you.
thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else about feelings, ways of coping with them?
Have to live through them. You just have to live through them. Can you hear me, Kathy?
Yes. Can you make yourself a little louder?
I'm not sure if I can.
Oh, well, that's better too, even
Is this
being
better
able.
if I'm closer
Yeah.
to it?
Yeah.
Okay. You just have to live through them, because the feeling will pass. No matter what the feeling is, no matter how difficult, no matter what it is, it will pass. And your job, I feel, or my job, I'll speak personally, is to live through whatever difficult feeling I'm feeling and know that I'll come out on the other side of it. It'll be over and life will go on. And yeah, that's what I want to say.
Thanks. Right. And now we can hear you, but we can't see you as well. The lighting. Okay, that's better. Thanks. And thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel very strongly about that, because certainly with the last couple of years, they've been very challenging moments, but I know that they will pass, because they do. And they may last longer than I want them to last, but that's life. And that's just the way it is. And it passes, and then your good mood comes again, which is good. You don't stay in misery. I don't stay in misery. Let's put it that way. And I'm talking specifically about pain. If something hurts, that feeling will pass. I'm not talking so much, I guess, I'm talking more physical than an emotional feeling.
But it is also true with emotional. As we know, the only way beyond grief is through it. If you pretend it's not there, if you push it down, it comes up at the wrong times and the wrong places. And for everybody, it's a different length of time. But you just got to keep going, and like going through a tunnel, just as it gets the darkest, you start to come out of the other side.
And there are lots
Whatever
of
help you
and
need.
there are lots of those tunnels and coming out on the other side. That's, I think, something that people lose track of when they're going through things. They figure, okay, this is it. And that's not it. It may last 5 minutes. It may last 5 years. You don't know how long it is going to last. And you just have to deal with it to the best of your ability at that time.
Thank you.
Sure.
So other ways of dealing with difficult emotions is through our self-talk as well. Just going back to the model, just because that's what this course is on, of a cognitive behavioral model. We feel that feeling, we're aware of it, but we have the skills and can develop the skills to change how we're thinking about that. And if we change how we're thinking about it, it's also going to change how we feel about it. And the example I gave in my book was really from my own life, thankfully, many years ago. Hopefully my husband doesn't mind my sharing this about him, but I think everybody here knows Carl, and anyone listening to the tape after who doesn't, it's not an unkind story. He just somehow had the habit of leaving his socks on the floor. And I'd be like, well, we don't have a maid who's going to come pick that up. Nellie's off today. And I would find myself getting so angry, not that there was a Nellie, in case you missed that, that, you know, how can he think so little of me that he puts and leaves his socks on the floor? And I took it all about me. I'm not valued. I don't mean anything. He thinks of me just as someone who should pick up after him and clean his clothes and do the laundry and make the food. And so one time I decided, I said, well, I'm going to ask him about it and talk to him about it. And I said, you know, I really feel undervalued when I come in a room and there's your laundry, your dirty clothes on the floor. And he was like, well, you know, I'm going to wear those again. They're not ready to be washed. And I'd say, okay. So to this day, we have a chair in our bedroom, and I've shared this with other groups, so I don't feel, we have a chair in our bedroom, and that's his chair. And anything he doesn't want washed yet, I said, I'm not going to sniff your undershirts to see if they need to be washed. Anything that you don't want washed yet, but you're going to wear, put it on the chair. Anything that needs to be washed, put it in the basket for the laundry. Or, of course, I gave him the option of doing all of his own laundry. You know, that's a choice too. Or you can be responsible for all your clothes. I'll be responsible. No, that's okay. So this is how we worked it out. And so that went fine and continues to go fine to this day. And I really stuck to it. And he learned if it isn't on the if it isn't in the laundry basket, it's not being washed, period. And I learned to not look at the chair. It's none of my business what's on there. But the other thing that switched is a bit like Jan was saying, that as the years went on, thank God, I began to put a blessing in there. Oh, thank God my husband's alive and there's his socks. And thank you, God, for another day together. And so these were cognitive switches. That's my point. That when I'm doing a job, he usually does, that was usually his. And as people here know, he has Parkinson's and his abilities are becoming more limited and his thought processes are beginning to show the effects. So when I see a job that he used to do and he's not doing anymore, I can remind him, I can ask him, and then I just shift my thinking to, oh, that was so nice that he could still snow blow the driveway, or that he put away the porch furniture. I mean, I can't do those things. So I'm consciously shifting my thinking and saying, that's what I choose to focus on. And all I can say is, as a result, because that's what I'm focusing on, I don't feel angry. Again, I think it was Jan that said too, that's the disease. I can't fight that disease. I have to accept it. And that's the effect of the disease. And if it isn't the effect of the disease, then maybe there's some room still to work with it. And we can change that behavior. But it's just a lot of acceptance all along the way. And what we say to ourselves.
I think we've all, you know, during this pandemic, focused, at least for me, I don't know about other people, I'm always thinking about silver linings to everything, rather than trying not to feel caged in and limited. I'm focusing on things that I haven't had the time to do, or, you know, not running to a meeting, not running here and there, but for some self-care, number one. And number two, you know, reading more, educating myself more. So I think we've all done this cognitive behavior changes during this pandemic. I mean, because I'm so blessed and I am truly grateful for the fact that I have a house and food and safety. After those things, I'm just looking at everything as the cup is fuller than it was, not emptier. And I think, I don't know if that came with age or survival, but I think that this pandemic has really been a super restrictive thing, and yet I found so much freedom in it that I probably would have never. I would still be running around doing things and not thinking about things that perhaps make me a better person. And so, I'm looking at it as I'm thankful in a way. I wish it didn't have to be a pandemic, and I wish there didn't have to be, of course, all those lives lost. But I think, I don't know, I always think God works in mysterious ways. And, maybe this is a resetting of our priorities and resetting of how we think and how we deal with everyday life. And I think it's in a way a blessing.
Thank you, Susan. Yes.
Susan and everybody else, do you think it will stay? I know we've started to go out with friends. We're vaccinated and we're still careful where we go and this and that, but I don't want to get into the habit of not being thankful. I mean, every single day, I'm glad our kids are all employed. We have houses, food, just like you say. But I lost a friend or two. And I just hope we can kind of keep this in mind when things get back to normal.
I don't think you'll forget it. I think it's the type of thing you don't forget.
Not forget, but will we continue to be appreciated? We used to go out all the time to restaurants.
It will come and go, sometimes more than others. Sometimes you'll be very grateful, and sometimes it won't be at the top of your brain.
I just want to add in, I personally don't think you should be going to restaurants. That's just my feeling. Or I mean, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean, we don't know yet whether it means you can carry it to someone else. And
Susan, I agree. Yeah.
So, but I
point.
think that we're all going to continue to understand that some people don't give a damn about anyone else. Anybody who walks around that isn't wearing a mask, I'm sorry, to me, it's a selfish thing. And so I think we've learned, and I don't know, Janie, we've talked about how are we going to reset our lives, and Kathy, we've talked about it. How do you reset your life after something like this? I don't know.
It's kind of like this was going to be next week, but the question of when we leave Egypt, what do we take and what do we keep? And also what Jan is saying, well, will we still be grateful? That's a conscious choice. Who do you want to be as we emerge from the pandemic? What have I learned? What have I learned from this? Perhaps, I'm going to work with the environment more. I mean, one of the most amazing things I read was something that told about within weeks of things shutting down, how wildlife returned to certain places and trees and plants that hadn't bloomed or grown for years began to grow again. I mean, maybe it was even the final wake-up call to us that you better take care of this earth. The time is shortening. That's one way I see it too. And I know for myself, I think we were just talking about this the other day, Mimi, about mask wearing. I'm going to be doing it for probably forever. I mean, for the first year that I can remember, I didn't have a horrendous cold and bronchial cough that I get from that. And when I would FaceTime with our grandkids, the older one has asthma, and I didn't have one stretch where I saw him with his nebulizer on. And the younger one usually had one cold after another with everything running down his nose. And they've had the healthiest year they've had so far. And they've been back in school. They're back at school and they have masks on. And they don't see a lot of other people. They see their cousins who've been in their pod. So I'm not saying we stay that restricted, but I think we have to really think about what we're keeping from this whole experience and what we can let go of. I find myself very anxious doing something I haven't done or going even for a ride that I haven't taken, or so I was very comfortable in my little cocoon, and it's harder for me to go out. And I realize I have to start learning how to do life again when it is truly safe, and if it really is. Shelley, you wanted to say something?
Well, this just brings up the question of what's going to happen with Rosh Hashanah, like at a Good Asachim. Because I'm like you, I'm still a mask wearing person, even though I've had 2 vaccinations. I'm not ready to go back to the synagogue. And I think about Rosh Hashanah, and I'm not ready to be in that room with all those people without wearing a couple of layers of masks. And I don't even know if I want to do that.
Well, Shelley,
Josh can probably answer that.
Yeah, Josh,
specifically
you're
about
talking-
Agudat Achim.
Well, and thank you, Jan, for my shield, because that's brought a lot of comfort to me.
Oh,
Really
good.
got me through months and months. Yes.
I'm glad I came back just in time. I can answer this either
Yeah.
double masked or not. There's nobody here with me in the office right now, which is the only reason why I don't have them on. We received a sizable donation from the Pletman family, Ed and Mike Pletman, this past year, which allowed us to kind of invent this live stream system that we now have in place, which we've been using for each Shabbat since this past high holidays. We expect that we're going to be using that for probably many years to come, hopefully, and that we'll be able to have more people, have more congregants attending virtually and participating virtually by watching the stream from home, anywhere in the world. So those who, and you're not alone in this, Shelley, there will be others later this year who won't be comfortable attending services just yet, maybe for another few years or so. In which case, we encourage as many people as possible to make their own decisions to do what's best for them, and that we have this option that you can watch by the live stream.
So the synagogue will probably be open for services, and those who want to go can go. And is that what you mean?
Sure.
Limited number.
We'll probably raise the limit. Right now, we're limited to 30 people for Shabbat services. We usually have a similar group each week, with the occasional family who may want to attend in person if they're saying Kaddish for a yahrzeit or so forth. I'm expecting, if all is going well and everybody gets their vaccine over the next couple of months, and the positive testing rate in the capital region goes down below 1%, that we'll be able to go back to our 50% attendance, which is about 60 people. We may have more than 60 people, but there's plenty of space. We've spread out the chairs that are in the sanctuary throughout the social hall in groups of 4 so that families can sit together, but far enough away from other family units. And I think
have you updated the HEPA system there?
we did replace a number of the filters in the different HVAC units that we have, but they haven't been upgraded in the sense that some shopping malls have done. But the air is constantly being circulated, the air is clean. And with 20 or 30 people in the room, the size of the sanctuary plus the social halls, it was determined that it's not necessary to make major upgrades. The HVAC unit over the social hall will be replaced in the next few years or so. So that may be something to look into when we do that, since we're going to be doing that anyway.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's not even COVID. I mean, it is COVID that I'm afraid of, but I mean, in 2019, Rosh Hashanah, I got sick from going to synagogue because I know I saw somebody who had a very bad cold or the flu or whatever they had, and they were sneezing, coughing, and they spread it. So
That may be part of the, I'm sorry, Shelley, go ahead.
no, this has been a good year for people not getting the flu.
Right.
No flu.
No colds.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we've all learned, and even Josh, maybe the president of the synagogue or somebody puts in their remarks that go out ahead of time. Please remember to stay home if you're not feeling well. Wear a mask if you may be coming down with a cold. Don't come if you have the cold. Yeah, think of others. Think of others.
I'm with you, Shelley. I never escaped being ill from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. People were hugging, kissing, touching.
Sure.
And I'd like to say, well, that's wonderful, but is it? Because I have an autoimmune disease. And so the high holidays would wake up the sleeping tiger in my body, and I'd be so sick. I needed inhalers and things like that. So it was a question of, do you stay home and feel guilty because you're not there? Or do you go knowing you're going to come home very ill? But
Yeah,
I think that the burden of wearing a mask it won't be a burden. It'll be a gift.
Yeah.
And I think there are very few people who are going to make fun of you for it. And if they do, too bad.
Oh, my kids make fun. My kids make fun of me that I'm, so protective of my triple layers of mask and shield and whatever, that I'm not exposing myself and not letting my immune system build up to normal things. Forget about COVID.
Well, I think we're all old enough that our immune systems have had some great testing, and I think that the freedom you give yourself this year is to make your choice about your behavior and what you want to do, not only before Passover and during Passover, but all through the year. That's your freedom, that you know yourself more than anybody else knows you, and you are free and in fact have to do what is right for you. And there shouldn't be any guilt attached to that at all. As Josh has said, that's why, thank God, we've had Zoom. I listen to the Shabbat services on Zoom. I've had 2 vaccinations, but I'm not ready to go back in person yet. I hope to get there, but I can't push it, and I have to stay in my comfort zone. That's my job. Venture out of it a little bit as I can, but it's up to me to keep my mind and body well.
Kathy, if I can add on to what you're saying, I think a number of people over the course of this year have, we've all had the time to process the cultural change that's going to be part of the new normal when we do start coming back at higher numbers. But there are going to be those who may consider, if in 2 to 5 years, if they have a cold or if they're feeling symptoms of the flu, they're not going to be coming, because after all of this year, we now know that it could be something else. And I feel like those people who may have gotten you sick in 2019 or in years past are going to feel a stronger moral obligation not to attend if they have even a sniffle or if they've been coughing. They won't be coming, more than likely. And those who, if we're in services and you hear someone cough in the back, everyone's going to turn, and you're going to notice that person, and they're going to be kind of ostracized for coming if they're coughing. So they're going to be cognizant of that as well.
Good point.
And there is going to be a social change involved. Even though we're a social people, we're a social community. We want to, if we're in a room together, we want to speak closely and hug each other and embrace. That's going to be difficult when we do get back and we have 60 to 70 people in the building, still standing 4, 5, 6 feet apart. That'll also be a process to learn.
Right.
People don't do it in the
I
supermarket.
have faith in us. I think that we will make sense of all this. And I mean, my heart goes out to everyone who isn't here anymore, and to families and friends of the people who died. There's no getting around that sadness. And yet the disease has, maybe we don't even know yet how much we will have learned from COVID and viruses and human contact. We don't even know where all this is going. I hope I stay optimistic, because I am right now. So I'm going to wrap us up. I just wanted to, one of the things I was going to do, though the conversations took other turns, which is fine. I truly enjoyed this session. And again, thank everyone. I have 2 books that they're not on the reading list in my book, because I didn't specifically use them for this book that I wrote or for this course, but they do meld very well with it. And they're both by, I didn't realize it, they're both by Melinda Ribner. And one is called Kabbalah Month by Month, A Year of Spiritual Practice and Personal Transformation. Here's what, that's weird, I can't.
It's your virtual background. It recognizes it's not a face and it blocks it out.
Oh, okay, I don't know. That's
and you
weird.
can't see my mask.
Oh, there it is. That's
What's
what
it called?
looks like.
Kabbalah?
It's called Kabbalah Month by Month, and it takes you through the Jewish year with Kabbalistic practices and thought and experiences. And it was written or published in 2002, but I would really recommend it. I like to have it and look at it all year, because it is month by month. But for example, for Passover and this time of year, she has a whole chapter on moving towards greater freedom, our speech. She ties it in with the astrological signs, Hebrew letters and tribes, and meditation. And she had some very good quotes there that I was going to share with you, but I'll just recommend the book to you. The other book is also by her, and it's called Everyday Kabbalah, I never know where the accents are, whichever you want to.
Kabbalah is Hebrew.
Okay, well, and that's by Melinda Ribner, Ribner, Everyday Kabbalah, A Practical Guide to Jewish Meditation, Healing, and Personal Growth. And in that one, she teaches a lot about breathing and meditation in very, very understandable, easy terms. And towards the end, there's a whole section on meditations for self-healing, that you can put yourself in a comfortable, relaxed position and focus on your breathing and read it as you want. Or what is also, if you can do it, is record your own voice reading the meditation to you, and then put on earphones and go to a quiet, alone, uninterrupted space and use those meditations. All tied in with your breathing, as we have said, that the breathing and relaxation while you're breathing is the most important thing you can do for yourself, of taking in healing energy from the universe, from the natural world, from God, having that energy go through the various parts of your body, bringing healing and comfort to the smallest, most minute cells, into the muscles and tendons and physical parts of your body, connecting with all your organs, your brain, your mind. If you do one thing, try to do that. Okay. Hi, Rabbi.
All right.
So we're going to end for today. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions?
Just thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. I truly enjoy it. Next week, we'll do some wrap up as well as talk about spiritual freedom and where we each find ourselves going into Pesach. And I'll have to talk with Josh and Rabbi about a time or whatever, but it would be great to meet once more post-Pesach to hear how everybody's Seders and Passover holiday went, and to hear if any of what we've talked about is helpful.
I wanted to pop in to thank Kathy because I won't be here next week to thank her on the last week because I'm taking my final week of family leave the week before Passover so that we can actually put Seder on the table. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that Kathy taught this class, is teaching this class out of the goodness of her heart and because she's passionate about the subject, and has done so with grace, and we're so grateful for her spirit and energy in our preparations for Passover. And one way that you can also continue this work is to sign up for the daily messages of inspiration that I'll be sending out throughout the counting of the Omer, which builds on the spiritual preparation for Passover by asking people to have a spiritual moment every day, from a redemption, from the Exodus from Egypt to Revelation, to the experience of receiving the Torah at Sinai, 7 weeks of 7 days. And this year, I'm going to be sending out a daily inspirational message that's opt-in. So you have to sign up for it, but anybody, you don't have to be a member to sign up. You just have to sign up. And it's going to come with a journal entry prompt every day. So it will be a quote and an opportunity to do a little bit of spiritual writing that will build on the work that you're doing here, and hopefully will continue to do. So I encourage everybody who has been enjoying Kathy's teaching to find the link to sign up for that on our website, and to buy a special dedicated journal and to do some writing specifically on this spiritual path.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I look
Thank
forward
you.
to that. That should be wonderful.
I just want to apologize for coming so late. I was in an appointment that I could not get out of, but I enjoyed what I heard, and I certainly love these Jewish traditions and holidays and activities. But I just want you all to remember that today you're Irish, just for one day.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I'm glad you were able to come for some of it. And just as a reminder, these sessions are posted on the website if you do want to listen to what you didn't hear yet.
You can go right there. I just posted the link to the chat. I would also like to remind everybody, while Rabbi's here and his presence reminded me to mention, members and non-members near and far, I would imagine, are welcome to fill out the form which we have on the homepage of our website to sell your chametz and authorize Rabbi to essentially, Rabbi, you may be able to phrase it better than I can, if you'd like to.
Just to authorize me to make sure that you are not the owner of any chametz, any physical chametz on Pesach.
Someone will.
The spiritual chametz, that's the realm of this course. The physical chametz, we definitely hope that you empower me or another rabbi to sell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as you have a fire and burn your physical chametz, you can take whatever you've been wanting to let go and just visualize it going up in that smoke and back out to the universe to heal. It's not yours anymore.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
Okay.
you.
Have a good week. I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Thank you so much.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
week, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a great
Thank
week.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, folks.
Bye.
Bye.